9th, 2025, regular meeting of the San Ramon Planning Commission. We are calling this meeting to order at 6 p.m. Okay, item 2, roll call. Can the recording secretary please conduct the roll call?
Commissioner Alpert,
Here.
Commissioner Wallace,
I'm here.
Vice Chair Curtis, and Chair Kuznick.
I'm here. All right, we go to item 3, the Pledge of Allegiance. If we all stand and please join me in the pledge. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. Thank you. Okay, item 4, public comments or written communications. At this time, members of the public may address the Planning Commission on any item not already included in tonight's agenda. If you would like to speak, please fill out a speaker card located in the back of the room and submit it to our recording secretary. We will not be taking public comment via Zoom. So do we have any public comments for non-agendized items?
No public comment received and no speaker cards.
Okay, very good. Thank you so much. All right, let us go to item number 5, which is additions and revisions. Do we have none as far as I can see? We're all good. Okay, item 6, the consent calendar. 6.1, minutes of the Planning Commission regular meeting, January 7th, 2025. Do we have a motion to approve?
I'll move to accept the minutes of January 7th, 2025.
I'll second.
Okay, very good. We'll take the vote. All right, and that has passed 4-0. Thank you very much. Okay, item 6, we have none. Let's see. Let's go to item 7. Continued items after the closing of the public hearing. There are none. Item number 8, open public hearing. There are none. Item 9, public hearing, new items. There are none. Item 10, non-public hearing action items. There are none. Item 11, the study session, commissioner liaison reports, and interest items /staff reports. Item 11.1, Camino Ramon Apartments Residential Development Study Session at 2453 Camino Ramon. So, Ms. Yee.
Okay, well, thank you so much for the opportunity to provide a presentation this evening. I will keep my presentation short and will invite the applicant and property owner to come and provide a presentation on their project. The application is in its 30-day completeness review period right now, and so staff is in the process of reviewing the application and preparing our comments on completeness. But during this time, we'd invite the Planning Commission and the public to provide feedback on the project so that we can give that feedback to the applicant early on in the process. Great, thank you.
Good evening, Chair Kuznick and Planning Commissioners. On behalf of Sunset Development, I'm Stephanie Hill. I'm joined this evening by Dixie Boss from Eden Housing and Katya McLean from Steinberg Hart. We appreciate the opportunity to introduce our newest residential development in Bishop Branch, 2453 Camino Ramon, providing affordable homes to families and seniors. Our vision is to transform Bishop Branch into a 15-minute district, seamlessly blending homes, the workplace, shopping, entertainment, and parks and open space. Developing a vibrant mixed-use community requires diverse residential options. Within Bishop Branch, over 1,600 homes have received project-specific approvals. With every development, we discuss the need for affordable housing. This is the first community that is 100% affordable homes. These homes offer people the opportunity to call San Ramon home who otherwise have been priced out. Future residents may include service industry professionals from retail and restaurants, nurses, and public servants, including police, fire, and teachers. Many in the community associate this site with the Bishop Branch Service Center. We are consolidating our engineering and building services to a central location within Lakeside to improve efficiencies. In addition, Bishop Branch's sustainability efforts include converting to an all-electric vehicle fleet and electric maintenance equipment. These changes create the opportunity to develop a residential community in the center of Bishop Branch. This location has access via the Iron Horse Trail to Bishop Branch Medical, Iron Horse Middle School, Central Park, and the library. And along Camino Ramon, residents have access to the Lake District, Bartlett Pear Park, and City Center. And with that, I will turn it over to Dixie.
Thank you, Stephanie. Good evening, Commissioners, Chair. Thank you so much for the opportunity to present to you, to get your ideas and your feedback. It's an extraordinary opportunity to be able to do that early in the game, and we very much appreciate the opportunity because we believe it just makes the project better. My name is Dixie Baus. I am the Director of Real Estate Development for Eden Housing. We are a nonprofit corporation based in Hayward, operating all throughout the state from the sun up to the sundown, so to speak, with 145 communities that we own, serving more than 25,000 residents in their homes. We provide housing ranging from family housing, senior housing, formerly homeless housing, veterans housing, all across the spectrum of affordable housing. And that affordable ranges anywhere from all the way extremely low income to moderate income housing. So we have a number of our communities, as you can see in the states, just kind of rack itself from the top to the bottom. And these are where we have completed communities. We're of course working in other counties where we don't have other communities yet, but I promise I will get those dots connected. Our firm has a full service firm in which we are developer, owner, property manager, as well as resident services provider. We also provide in-house asset management services, and we have a robust department that focuses on long-term sustainability. Eden's experience with different types of developments really focuses on public partnerships, private partnerships. We have a lot of work that we've completed in partnership with many cities and many counties across the state. We do some developer-driven land purchases in which we go out and purchase property as well in areas in which we are looking to expand or there are funding opportunities that offers. Our financing isn't unique to affordable housing development. We use predominantly low-income tax credits, both of the 9% and the 4% variety. Those of us who are finance wonks I'll make sure to not talk in numbers and letters because I do have that tendency. But we also use a lot of local funding, regional funding, state funding, and some federal funding, depending upon the availability and what's going on at that particular budget session. Getting to the development, I just want to do a brief overview of the development, and then I'd love to turn it over to our architect from Steinberg Hart, Katia McLean. But what we're envisioning here is a total of 200 homes, and they would be consisted in 2 buildings. One building would be a large family project consisted of 120 homes, and the second building would consist of 80 homes for seniors. Those would be age restricted at 55 and older, so I am now qualified to live in something that I'm going to build. We offer robust amenities in both buildings, so both buildings can operate either together or they can operate standalone, and those amenities will range based upon what we've got in each building. So for example, in our large family, we'll focus in on more of the educational component, making sure that we have a technology center where our kids can access technology equipment, also the ability to have community gathering spaces for an advanced after-school program where we provide enrichment learning. We also provide fitness centers, both in our senior and in our family, outdoor gathering spaces, community gardening opportunities, which is super popular with our older generation people, me, and really just normal things for people to do outside of their homes. We design with the intent in mind to bring people out of their homes and gather into their community. So at this time, I'd like to turn it over to Katya, who can much better explain the architectural details and walk you through what our vision is. Before I do that, I do want to mention that some of the community benefits that we're keeping track of here is how our community would help the city meet its RENA goals. And so really important on our affordability levels, we already know locked in this early that we will have at least 150 of those homes that will be up to 50% AMI, which will meet that very low income category. And then the remainder would be up to would meet in the low income category. So it could meet 80% to 60% range, depending upon how the financing really shakes out in the end. So a very, very good range of opportunity for a lot of people who already live and work in this community. I really am going to stop now.
Good evening, commissioners. I am Katya McLean. I'm a partner with Steinberg Hart Architects. And about 50% of the work that we do is actually around housing, from market rate to affordable housing. For us, that is our commitment to quality design, design excellence, and housing for all. And that overarching idea, it's really one of the important key takeaways when we design every project. How do you have a strong concept that connects with the community, that you cannot plop it anywhere in the world, but actually belongs in the community, and how does that respond to the context? So I will start with the organizational site plan strategy for the project. To your left, you will see that there's Iron Horse Trail, and we have that organization really around a shared open space in the center that then connects with the two levels of podium at each one of the buildings with lush landscape, and then start having that visual connection with Iron Horse Trail in between the buildings. And you can start seeing them, in the renderings. Really, it was important for us to also emphasize the pedestrian safety of the seniors and the families. So organizing the site by just having a fire access road and vehicular access, on one plane, and then connecting, that interior space as a community garden was very important for us. Next. Oh. Thank you. Yeah. These are the landscape render plans. If you see at the bottom, that is the ground floor with plenty of fire access. But again, that central space really organizing and defining the entire site plan strategy. Close to the Iron Horse Trail, we have that community garden and an area where the community can also gather. At the top and at the podium level for each one of the buildings, that landscape area that Dixie talked about with playground structures, outdoor space to the community spaces, and areas where seniors can actually do some planting also at that podium level. And as we go through the elevations, we look at your objective design and development standards and make sure that we comply with the massing and the modularity of the breaks on the facade. and also understand that vertical and horizontal articulation, was important for, for this development. So we have changes in material, and we're hoping that eventually as the project progresses, there are some details and trims that could go around the windows that also help with your objective design standards as we continue the design of the project. This is a rendering of that central space. You can see the senior housing to the left, the family housing to the right, and really that idea that pedestrian safety is important for the entire community and how it starts connecting, to the entire context. Dixie, do you want to finish?
So from the development standards, it was really important for us to take a look at what was already not only built already out there, but also what's in your standards now, what's in your zoning code. And we wanted to do that so that we could minimize the amount that we would be away from those codes, if you will. So in terms of setback, our proposed development meets all the front, the side, and the rear and the side setbacks. In terms of density, using a state density bonus, we're within, we can apply an 80% density bonus on the highest density number when we are 100% affordable housing. So our state density bonus is at 89 dwelling units per acre. The maximum height is at 85 in terms of the city standards, and we're at 70 and 80 feet. It's really important for us to try and keep that height down as much as possible, not only to meet the standard, but also to minimize construction costs, because when you start going up a little higher than that, you're into commercial standards. Floor area ratio, you skipped one, so that the green one up above shows that we're at 1.74 within the range of the city standard for this. So as on the landscaping, minimum of 15% is required on the lot. We have 21% landscaped. Parking is another area in which we'll have for our state density bonus. The city requirements on the parking would be 292 spaces. We're providing 160 spaces within the two buildings. And in terms of the objective design development standards, our application was submitted prior to the city's adoption of those standards. But as Katya mentioned, we're keeping an eye on those standards because we want to make sure that we incorporate everything that's already been a forethought from in this community, in the existing developments, and in the developments to come. And in terms of mixed use, again, it's a little bit questionable as to the code right now, but we know that we're not providing a mixed-use component, but it would be eligible as well for a state density bonus concession or waiver. That's all the presentation that we had, and we welcome your comments, your questions, your thoughts, and we'll open it up to you all.
Do we have questions for the applicant at this time? Public comment?
Can I just make one clarification in the staff report? It was noted in the density bonus section that there's 4 concessions that are available for this project based on the affordability type, just in our cursory review of the application. And I noted that they were not requesting any concessions. That meant, I meant to say they were not requesting any waivers at this time, but there is one concession related to parking.
Right.
So just wanted to make that clarification. Thank you.
Okay. All right. So before we carry much farther off the agenda here, we will open for public comment. Do we have any speaker cards for public comment?
No written communication was received, but we do have a speaker card.
Excellent.
Max Zhang.
Hi, good evening, Chair, Commissioners, and staff. Excuse me. My name is Max Zhang. I'm a resident, actually, I'm a local kid. My family and I have lived here in San Ramon and Windermere Ranch since 2007. And I'd like to speak in support of this project. Just first of all, I think the plans look excellent. I think Eden clearly did a great job with a very well thought out design. But more importantly, I just want, this project represents a lot of new housing, and the Bay Area, as we all know, desperately needs more affordable housing. So it's fantastic to see 200 affordable units in the city that I grew up in. Eden was talking about our regional housing need allocation, our RHNA goals, and I just want to remind the commission that the state has tasked us with building over 5,000 homes for this RHNA cycle. So we have until 2031 to take care of that. And half of those homes, around 2,400, as Eden showed, were very low or low income homes, right, for lower income households like this project. According to the state's data dashboard, we have only built 11 of these lower income homes, and I'm almost certain that that data is not up to date. But the point is that we are clearly behind in our goals. We only have 6 out of 8 years left this cycle. So, approving projects like this is important for us to keep pace. If we don't build, we can face some really severe penalties from the state. They could fine us, sue us, revoke our local control over land use and planning decisions, which is not a good outcome. If we're going to be forced to build homes anyway, we might as well build them now while we have control over where and how they're being built, rather than waiting 6 years from now and losing that control. And the final reason why I support this project and building more homes like this is for a very personal reason. If San Ramon and the Contra Costa County supervisors had not approved the Doherty Valley specific plan about 20 years ago, my own neighborhood could not have been built. And me, my family, my friends, my classmates would not have had the chance to grow up in this great, safe community where we have access to some of the best schools in the Bay Area and a really great job market, lots of great career prospects after graduating. I want more people, San Ramon's future residents, to have access to the same opportunities that I had growing up. And that can't happen unless we build homes for them. So please move this project as quickly as you reasonably can through the approval process. Let's not keep San Ramon's future residents waiting. Thank you.
Thank you very much.
I have no other speaker cards.
Okay, excellent. So we will close public hearing on this. All right, now, gentlemen, comments and feedback.
I have some questions.
Okay, questions count.
Okay. Now, there's 3 of you. I know, unfortunately, you're going to have to bounce up like marionettes. It would be actually better if you were sitting across the table, then I could just point. So as opposed to doing this, so you'll forgive me. I don't know which of you would be best qualified to answer the question. Stephanie, you're hiding behind this rostrum, but I see you. No, you don't have to come up yet. Okay. All right. Okay. What I'm going to do is going to throw out a question, and then whoever decides to come up, just answer it. We'll do it that way. Okay, let's start with the low-hanging fruit. Who owns the property you want to build this project on?
The property is currently owned by a Sunset entity.
Okay, and I'm assuming that as part of the there will be a transaction by which Sunset or the Sunset entity, I forget the name of it, I'm sure you know, would transfer title and fee to the organization, am I right?
That's correct. There would be a conveyance of the property from the Sunset entity to an Eden Housing entity.
Okay. Does the developer Eden Housing have an option to buy the property now?
So we are currently working on the agreement, but we don't have a signed document.
Okay, so I would guess it would be something more than a concept of a plan, but it's not exactly something that's in writing right now. Correct.
That's correct. It's in process.
Okay. Now, forgive me, ma'am, because I don't remember your last name, and I know it's in here. So please forgive me if I say Dixie says this. It's not, no disrespect. That's the part of the name I remember. Okay. Now, Dixie mentioned during her presentation that typically Eden Housing, correct me if I'm wrong, basically relies on financing through tax credits. All right. Okay. So here's my question, and both of you can stand there. Besides supplying the real estate on which the housing is proposed to be built, what is Sunset contributing to this project?
Sunset's contributing the land.
I'm
for
sorry?
this- Sunset is contributing the land for this development.
Anything beyond that?
No.
Thank you. By the way, and this is actually, you don't have to get up for this. On your sheet, your development sheet 1.00, it does describe Eden as the developer/owner. I don't think owner is ready yet to come on that. The other thing too is you have an APN number for the property, which is a typo. You have 058, it should be 053. And I only mentioned that when I tried to pull up 058 to look at the property on the county GIS. I wound up looking at someplace in Oakland. So just, you might make a note of that. Do either of you ladies know what the fair market value of the property is right now?
We do not currently have a fair market valuation for the property.
Oh, okay. When I did find the correct APN number, I was able to get the assessed value is about $3 million. One of the things I wanted to ask you about was the secondary access. I believe that's in your description, at least it's in the staff report, the secondary access. As I understand it, the secondary access would be from the parking lot of the still continuing commercial building, which is BR9. Now, right now, there is no access from BR9 directly to the subject property. So I'm assuming that there would have to be a cut through the area to allow access. Am I right?
That's correct. We're proposing to put an easement in place to allow that access through the adjacent commercial property.
Okay, so does the easement currently exist, or that is to be granted once the project moves forward?
That is to be granted in conjunction with the project moving forward.
Okay, now, the access to the subject property from BR9 is one of the two entrances. One is the entrance off of Camino Ramon, which I do note has a southbound turn if you're going south on Camino Ramon. In terms of going through BR9, there seems to be two entrances. One is also a left-hand or right-hand turn into BR9 off of Camino Ramon, but there's also another entrance to BR9 close to the Iron Horse Trail off of Norris Canyon. My question is, has anyone talked to our city traffic engineer whether the approach that you've suggested is acceptable to the city?
So this circulation has been reviewed with city staff, particularly the fire department, in terms of emergency vehicle access. But I don't, have you reviewed it with this traffic engineer?
The BR9 access is only for the EVA. There will be no private vehicle access or access to the development by residents through that easement. So it's only to service emergency vehicles, fire department.
Okay, so the secondary access is literally secondary only for emergency vehicles?
That's correct.
Okay, thank you. Now, you're projecting two different buildings on the subject property. The non-age restricted building, that would be 5 levels of apartments above 2 levels of parking. Okay, so that in essence, would it be fair to call that a 7-story building?
Right. It's a 5/1 for the senior and a 5/2
Okay.
for the
So the
family.
non-age restricted one from, people younger than me, that would be 7 stories and the senior would be 7. 6. Would there be a lot split to separate the buildings, or is it all going to be part of one lot?
This is where we want to make sure that we're designing for the most flexibility. It is potentially possible that it all gets financed at one time. It is possible as well that we may finance them separately. If we finance it all at one time under one owner umbrella, the lot will not be split. However, if we do finance them under different components, there will be a lot split because there will technically be two owners that will set up. And then we'll have to make sure that we record access easements and the like so that there can be reciprocal easements for all residents to come and go as well as guests.
Okay, well, now, when you talk about easements, you're talking about access to the lot itself?
Correct. So for example, you would have to have a recorded easement if you are a senior, you live in the back building in order to pass through.
Because the front of the property would be owned by a separate entity.
Correct.
Got it. Now, with respect to the parking, I have some questions about that, but one I want to raise right now is the parking in each building restricted to residents and guests of that particular building?
Technically, yes. In practice, when you have two owners in the same building owning each other, there may be some staff sharing, but you really don't see resident sharing going on in terms of parking. So you might see guest or staff sharing, but we don't typically share when we do adjacent buildings like this in other communities that we've built. We haven't had the need to do that.
Okay, so if there is sharing, it's sort of under the radar?
It's really staff. It's not, because what's going to happen is each site is going to be key fobbed and each building will be on their own security, if you will. So it's controlled access. So if you don't live in that building, then you're not going to be able to get in. And so that's why I say it's likely only going to be staff if it's at all shared, which is improbable, to be honest.
Okay, so let's assume hypothetically Sally lives in the senior building and Bob wants to visit her. You have guest parking in the senior citizen building, do you not?
I'm going to let Katya speak to that. Do we have guest parking inside? It's not designated at this moment inside the building.
Okay. Now, am I correct that there's no surface parking on the lot as the buildings are currently designed?
They're currently designed, no, because that access road is for fire. So fire asked us to keep that clear. That doesn't mean that, that it could accommodate, some temporary parking. What we did was actually do a drop off in that central area so that cars can go in and out in order not having to park, in that private road, private street that we are creating.
Okay, but as we're speaking right now, there's no intent to use the emergency access route for
Correct.
parking. Okay,
Correct.
so let me go back to my original question. If Bob wants to visit Sally at the senior citizen building, is he going to be able to park inside the building if it's controlled by some type of security system that requires some type of system like a fob?
Operations question.
In the developments that we have that have guest parking within the same garage, what you typically see is you see a setback of a gate. So that allows for vehicles to come in, park, drop off who are not residents. A good example could be, not always, but the Postal Service. Postal Service may whip in, park, unload the mail, then leave. They still can get in the garage, but they cannot access beyond a certain point. The fire department is definitely going to be working with us on how far that point goes, because that's pretty prescriptive in the fire department code, if I'm not mistaken, but I am really speaking out of my expertise here.
Okay, so would it be fair to say at this point that as we speak, maybe there might be some type of guest parking in that extended area for the postal workers or whatever? Okay.
Yes, I think so. That is correct.
Okay. Now, one of the things that was told us in the staff report was we're supposed to give you feedback on the buildings. So I'm going to give you some feedback. I have looked at the description or the layout of the building, as you can see here. Now, I also went back because I downloaded your original application and I looked at what you had in the September 2024. My feedback to you is that the September 24 picture is much better. It depicts a building that I would not have a problem taking my kids to and say, this is our affordable housing in San Ramon. No disrespect to Ms. Hill, but the current version looks like the office building that we're tearing down next door at BR7. So I would urge you to try and do something closer to September 24 than what you have here.
I'm sorry, can you make that statement one more time? Are you talking about the elevation of the building in September? Because
It's,
that was our design, not Sunset's design.
okay, so let me put it this way. When I looked at the picture, it may have been just the coloring or the way the colors were out, but the white, the stark white looks like BR7, looks like BR13, looks like BR3. I don't think you want to have an industrial type picture going with your Eden housing, affordable housing. So I would use some color and maybe also on the architectural workings to not make it so stark as it looks like almost like a hospital. Try and make it a little more homey, especially for the old people because they're going to want it. I'm guessing that since you don't have financing in place, you cannot give us an estimate of how long it would take to start construction if the project were approved.
I can't. I can tell you that we cannot start working on financing applications until after our entitlements are done. I can tell you that we're doing some groundwork now. There are some local and regional sources that we can talk to, earmark, if you will. But until we really have completed entitlements, it's really, hey, can we have a cup of coffee and a conversation?
No, that's perfectly understandable, given what your financing structure looks like. I want to ask you about the cost of your project. Now, I played around a little bit on the internet today. There was a figure that was given by the Bay Area Economic Council in 2019 about the average cost of building an affordable unit in the Bay Area, not specific to an area. San Francisco is over 700,000. But in the Bay Area as a whole, it was about $665,000 a unit, which is, if you stretch that over the 200 units you're proposing to build, would be well over $100 million. Is that what you're looking at in terms of construction costs? And I ask because you quite properly have talked about doing it in two tranches, depending on the availability of finance.
It's an interesting question, and I really appreciate finance questions because that is what I really like. That part of it. So last year, if you would have asked me to do 200 units all at once, the answer would have been, I don't know how I do that. It's too big. This year, it's not too big. So it really does depend on the environment of the investors out there who are buying the tax credits, but also very much so the lending environment. There's also some interesting kind of, not tricks, but it's advanced math that we're working on at Eden that helps factor in a little bit of higher AMIs, rent levels, if you will, when you have a pretty diverse economic community. And so what you end up having is a little bit higher average, but you're still meeting those extremely low income and low income. And so it attracts a certain investor who's willing to pay much more top dollar, certainly for San Ramon, as well as it attracts lenders who like the Eden brand very much, in which we can push them around a little bit and get some better interest rates. So there's a lot of loans that are out there right now that are trying to counteract some of the higher interest rates. Now, where we're going to get a little bit interesting is we don't know what the material costs, what the sticks and bricks will actually cost, given the possibility that there might be some upcharges in materials in the United States in the next few years. But again, it's like trying to read the tea leaves on that. Over 100 million for 200 units is not out of the ordinary for what we have financed. Right now, we are working on closing a project in downtown Santa Cruz that is right at 200 million, in which we have used tax credits, the cap and trade dollars from this state, a little bit of local money, not very much, but free land. And free land is worth a lot when you're talking about how you can go out there and leverage.
Okay. Rumor has it that we have all the lumber we need in the United States, so maybe that'll help.
We do, we just don't have any labor.
Well, that is a question going forward, is it not? I wanted to read something to you that is in your package, and I want to break it down after I read it to you, because there's some of the phrases I want to make sure I understand what they mean. This is from footnote 1 on packet page 15, and it reads as follows, quote, affordability levels are subject to change until final underwriting of construction closing, period. The average affordability will not exceed 60% AMI, period, close quote. Okay, let me break that down. The first phrase you use is affordability levels. Now, as you have used the term in your proposal, what do you mean by affordability levels?
Sure. I'm not sure if in our project description, if you recall seeing the chart where it had a 30%, 40%, 50%, those are what we call affordability levels. And this is without doing a market study out there to really see if the market can in fact bear these rents for the demographic in which we are targeting. For example, in much higher AMI areas, I'm not likely to charge senior rents at 60%. Sometimes that prohibits someone from aging in place, especially after they may have retired. And those higher rents, particularly in this county as well, but in Alameda County, Santa Clara County, they're very, very high and cost prohibitive, really. So we really look at the population that we're serving. And so when we're dialing in, what we have to make sure we do is the average of every unit that we charge has got to be under 60%, or we wouldn't be able to get the tax credits. The tax credits are extremely valuable because that is going to equate to about 50 to 60% of the equity needed to construct this building.
Okay, so let me ask you follow up. One of the questions I had to do with your phrase, quote, the average affordability will not exceed 60% AMI. Now, how do you calculate that figure? How do you come up with an average when you have, in your case, 200 units that are bracketed for at least 3 different categories? Very low, extremely low income, which is 30% and under, very low income, which is 50% AMI and under, and 60%, which is in the low income category. How do you come up with an average AMI?
Well, the tax credit program isn't like the HUD program where you charge 30% of the household's income. The tax credit rents are based on a prescribed rent number for that percentage of AMI. So we already know, for example, what the rent is for 30% units now in 2024. The 25 numbers aren't out yet, but we already know what those numbers are. And so what I do is I just watch the calculated balance with the number of units across both properties to make sure that of the units that are being rented and of the different categories that the average still stays within 60%.
How do you calculate the average over 200 units?
200 units divided by what the rents and the AMIs are per category, and then it's a pretty wicked formula. Yeah.
Well, I'm assuming it is.
Yeah.
So let me ask you this question. When all is said and done, in terms of the rents that are being charged, would it be fair to say, and would you agree to a condition of approval that said all the rents in this project will be at low income or lower levels?
Probably not. I don't think that would be a financeable deal from a lender perspective, because the lenders are really the ones who'll look at those restrictions and say, but I can tell you that it's a requirement of the tax credit project, of the program, to be at 60% or below.
Okay, so
But lenders will want to float up in the event of bad boy stuff, or if in the event of catastrophic failure in which they have to take the project back.
okay, so
Through the chair, if I might, when we talk about these financing deals, we did one with Aspen Wood. I worked with Aspen Wood, the CLAC.
you're gonna, I can't hear you.
I worked with Aspen Wood on their financing through this whole program that Eden will be going into. They are very, very difficult and very, very tricky. So I would caution the commission about conditions that mandate affordability levels when they're doing an all affordable project that'll be in the average of 60% AMI. Because it does, when you go into a financing strategy, they do look at the conditions of approval, and that will factor into the scoring for the project to be successful in funding.
Okay, the reason I asked the questions is that the financing doesn't enter into the question about qualifications for a density bonus and how much of a density bonus there is. It all looks at, and particularly the application as I understand it, you're going under the state density bonus law, which provides that if 100% of the units in the project are at low income or less, then you qualify for a certain level of density bonus, which gives you certain benefits, okay? So the reason I asked a question about would you agree that that all the units will be priced at low income or less is because that's the requirement for getting the type of density bonus that you're asking us to give you.
I would have to defer that to the attorneys to work out through when they do the regulatory restriction and the deed restriction on the property. That's just something that's beyond what I can speak to.
That's fine. I appreciate that.
Thank you.
I would never ask you not to obey the advice of your attorney. Okay. There's a section in your project about CEQA, and I'm not going to spend a lot of time on that at the moment, but it seems that there are two possible exemptions that you're looking at. One is the community plan exemption. The second is the infill project exemption. My question may be directed more to staff than to you, and that is, it seems to me that the infill exemption probably applies. I'm not sure that the community plan exemption does. And so my question to staff is, I assume there's going to be some type of workup for the CEQA issue, and who's going to be doing that?
So during this time of project completeness review, we're still reviewing all the documents to make sure that the CEQA analysis can be done until such time that the application is really deemed complete and we have all of the application materials that we need. We can't make a CEQA determination, but staff will be doing that determination.
Okay, well, that was the answer to my question, that we'll be looking for you for a recommendation on it. Thank you. In the density bonus law, there's a term that's used that in some cases is a requirement for certain aspects of the density bonus, and it's called a major transit stop. Am I correct that for your project, what you're looking at in terms of the major transit stop is our transit center down at the corner of Executive Parkway and Camino Ramon?
Yes, but the major transit stop really comes into play when we're doing 100% density bonus or above, and we're not going at that level. But yes, it would. And there's specific elements of what that transit center would provide as to whether or not we would be eligible for that. But it's not necessary for us to go at that level of density.
Okay. I did go on, I think it's HCD's map, because they have major I think the term is major transit stops. And if you drill down far enough into the map, it actually shows the transit center. And when I went out this morning, I couldn't stop myself. I checked the mileage from that transit stop to your project. It's 4/10 of a mile. I think the requirement's half a mile. So you're
It is.
in the
it-
ballpark.
I am banking on that too for that cap and trade money.
Okay. Parking. Would you just walk me through how you arrived at the parking that you're asking for? Well, let me withdraw that. A comment was made about asking for a concession with respect to lowered parking requirements as opposed to our zoning ordinance. My understanding is that the density bonus law allows a developer who meets certain criteria to ask for a parking reduction from the city if the developer meets certain requirements. It seems to me that's separate and apart from a concession or a waiver for that matter. So my question is, there are two different parking standards you are asking us to approve. One is for the senior building, which would be 0.5 spaces per unit. The other is for the non-age restricted building. You're asking us to approve 1 parking space per unit. And could you tell me how you arrived at those two numbers for those two buildings? Because when I went through the section of the density bonus law, it wasn't exactly clear how you arrived at those numbers.
You don't necessarily need to come up with a number in which you're going to ask for. You just say, I want a parking concession and here's what the calculated number is. That's the nature of the density bonus. But in terms of designing for what we wanted to do, Katya, do you feel comfortable with me making up stuff or do you want to come and do the technical stuff?
It goes back a little bit of, is this one project or is it two separate projects? Because the
Exactly.
family building, typically what we do is in a one-to-one. We know that families typically they have a car and then they will require parking for that unit. For senior, typically those requirements are less. Seniors sometimes, just use public transportation, other modes of transportation. And that's why when you look at it as a whole, it's not on a one-to-one, but for the family building, it is parked one-to-one, and the senior in a 0.5. So that was the rationale, from a planning point of view, from a design point of view. As Dixie mentioned, we don't have to say exactly how we're just asking for the concession for the project as a whole for now, because
Okay.
we don't know if there will be two projects or not.
Okay. Okay, I think I understand that part. The reason I asked is because there is a section in the density bonus law in subdivision P, which actually sets out what parking requirements the developer has a right to get the city to give them. So that's what I was trying to figure out. But apparently you can't tell me, here's how we figured it out by using that methodology.
Correct.
Okay, that's fair. That's all the questions I have.
That was easy.
Well,
Thank you.
I try to make my questions simple. I can't handle complex questions.
Thank you. We've got your comments down on the aesthetics as well.
All right, gentlemen. Commissioner Alpert, looks like you're
Sure.
ready to go.
Sure, it's hard to go after Eric sometimes. I did have a couple of questions for staff and then a couple of questions for the applicant. Because I was asked, if I could ask, Ms. Hill, you said the service, people have asked, where the service center going to go? And you said to Lakeside. Is Lakeside the building formerly known as 2600 or is it someplace else?
Yes, that's correct.
Oh, okay.
The building formerly 2600, formerly AT&T Pac Bell,
Perfect.
depending on which
Got it,
nomenclature we
got
want
it.
to use.
Okay, but people have asked, just 'cause they were curious, so
Yes.
I'm just curious about that. Question for staff, is the plan to send this through the ARB?
Yes, so we do have, the applicant has included an architectural review application as
Awesome.
part of their project. And so we are planning as part of the review process to include architecture review board.
Perfect. Okay, so that takes away the obligation of us to like or not like white or buildings and things like that. to let
I
them-
don't like white.
Yeah,
Gotcha.
but the ARB folks will do a great job on this. And then a second question for staff. A project like this, just to clarify, and when it comes back, just to educate us, it does fall under the inclusionary housing ordinance. And is that correct in terms of deed restriction and affordability and all of those things? And just want to make sure I understand correctly.
Sure. So the city's adopted inclusionary ordinance does require that any residential development application, so new units, more than 2 units within a project, be subject to the inclusionary housing ordinance. So as part of this project, there will be an affordable housing agreement that's recorded that would be required to meet the inclusionary housing.
Great. Thank you. Thank you. I was curious, again, parking, and since you've built 170 projects, similar to this, I assume that you have some data that you'd be willing to share at a future date with us to at least make us and through us, the public, comfortable with the parking being requested and the reduction and the 0.5 and the 1.0, because I think that is a question that I think pops out to
We can
folks.
provide that data.
That would-
Yes.
That would be helpful. And then I didn't quite follow the visitor parking provided or not provided. I kind of got the USPS truck drop off for a few minutes to drop off mail, but will there be visitor parking, or is that part of the project? Is it surface? Is it inside the garage? It wasn't quite clear.
Right now, with just the box design, none of the spaces are, they're not identified as either staff, resident staff or visitor parking. So in our application, we provided a chart that showed if we had to categorize these spaces, and they're all standard spaces, right? They're all standard spaces at this point, so there's no compact or any other space sizing. Then we don't have a number designated for visitors parking. I can assure you this is our first pass through, and we'll be taking a look at that garage parking plan to make it the most efficient for inside circulation, but also to provide a little bit more if we can. And then we'll have to really, really work with access department to make sure that that access gate is set up in the proper space as well.
Okay, that would be helpful. And then related to parking, EV charger availability, and is that anticipated to be inside the garages, or how will that work?
That is correct. We will comply with all that inside. I believe it was your zoning requirements that have very strict parking sizes, EV sizes, and numbers, as well as an allowance for a structure, to be placed, in the parking garage to make sure that there are clearances around columns, in the parking garage. So we follow all of that. Now we just need to finalize and start, making, those designations. And if visitor parking is one of those requirements that you feel strongly about it, then we will, again, accommodate where the gate is located. Is there any parking in that drop-off zone, in the center of the site, that could be for visitor parking? It would really, that's why we're seeking the feedback today. If that is a requirement that you said, I think you should, take a look this in more detail. We will provide that data. How did we get to parkulation, and what is visitor parking alternatives?
Thank you. And then bicycle parking as well, is that
Yes,
also part of the community?
there's bike parking, there's bike storage, and those are all requirements, from our application.
Okay, no intent to ask for a waiver or concession on those. And then, yeah.
But if I could mention on that in the family, we are really, really, really going above and beyond on bicycle. We are seeing more and more young families depend upon bicycle, particularly making room for e-bikes.
Yes.
Which are very difficult to bring into one's home. And so our bicycle parking area is a bit more robust than what you might see ordinarily.
Good. And that's what we've heard a number of times is that EV bicycle or electric bicycles are becoming more and more common and harder to park. As it relates to drop off and, deliveries, we're starting to see more and more questions coming through the ARB at least on, your Amazon deliveries, your food deliveries, not just the post office guy that can in and out in 5 minutes kind of guy, but the kind of people that are delivering things.
The Amazon delivery, correct.
Yeah.
That's why we provided that drop-off area in the center that can accommodate, an Amazon delivery,
Okay.
more than one just simple space, that can do deliveries. That was part of the idea, but also separated that from the pedestrian circulation inside of the complex and separate that from the EVA lane.
Okay, thank you. Thank you. This project is square in the middle of what we're calling our walking district. And so sidewalks and making it comfortable to walk on the street on Camino Ramon as well as along the Iron Horse Trail. When it comes back, it would be helpful to see a little bit more explanation of how that complies and how it works with,
We have been working with our civil engineer to make sure that the frontage along El Camino actually meets, the standards that have been designed. But yes, we can come with a section showing compliance.
Okay, thank you for that. And you answered the question, make sure I understood. The secondary access is entrance against BR9, but that's only for fire or emergency trucks. Is that right? Okay, so we don't need to worry about. Is the plan into the project? And I can't remember what BR6 across street is. It right in, right out, or can you turn left or right onto Camino Ramon? I just can't remember.
Right now, you can go both ways. If you're coming down Camino Ramon from the north, there is a dedicated, or at least a shared left-hand turn lane into the project. And I think it's a shared lane. So if you were making a left-hand exit out of the project to go south of Camino Ramon, you could use that too.
Got it. Okay. And as you mentioned, the traffic engineer will, when they take a look at the project, they'll make comments if they're. I think that is it for now. I think, first of all, I think this is a great project, in terms of affordability. So should have started with that. At some point, and this is really more for Sunset's benefit, I know the community will be concerned about the large family and one parking place per. And so I think we can anticipate probably a question or to ask you to explore a little bit of shared parking with one of the neighboring parking structures, kind of like you actually offered up for BR7, I guess, across the street. But I can just imagine that may come up, but that's not really your project per se. It's really more for Sunsets to think about,
You're talking about shared parking offsite?
Yes, at one of the large parking structures, whether it's BR15 or BR3 in the parking garage or, sharing parking with the service center. Although it's not close, but, just to explore the possibility a little bit on that.
Can we do rock, paper, scissors on that?
And I know tonight we're just writing comments and
I
feedback, and
appreciate your
so
comments.
it's
Thank you
just
so
something
much.
to make sure we think
I
about.
really do
Yeah.
appreciate it.
Yes. Okay, I think that's it for now for me. Thank you.
Commissioner Curtis.
Sure. I don't have as many questions. I'm not old enough to live in the building just yet, so. I would at one point, first of all, I do, thank you. I'll visit you all. At one point, I think it would be helpful for Sunset if you could get a master visual of how all these things are connecting, because now you have across the street, we have, City Walk, we have BR7, we have this. And my concern is that how are they all linking up to make it look like one actual city unit as opposed to different buildings just sitting next to each other, right? Because then you're also going to have not that far down the street from, the city center, you're going to have the 2 apartment buildings that are going to be built across the street from that. To me, I think the big concern for residents is how is this going to look, right? Because having a hodgepodge of just different buildings, even if they have similar standard designs, if they're not all somehow connected with, sidewalks width are the same, the way that the paths kind of go through BR7 to connecting to this building, that it has the same width, the same type of landscaping, right? We don't want to have, roses at one place and then those stop and all of a sudden it's just, some type of, other plant or whatever it is. It should look like an actual city that is connected. And right now, my biggest concern is with all these different pieces is that's not how it's going to look. And I think that's one of the things. So I would love to see some type of, visual of, hey, we're walking down the street from City Center to, Norris Canyon. What does this all look like? And how does this building connect to the one next to it, which we just, talked about at the last session that we were in? Where did the street access points go? Since this is a senior area, is there going to be access to getting over to the park that's by City Walk? And is it going to be easier for them? Where do they have to go all the way down to Executive Parkway to cross, or down to Norris and then all the way down, right? How does this all connect? So I think at one point it would be helpful to have some type of visual to see how this is all coming together, right? Because we know there's houses coming down, Chevron Park or Orchard, right? There's, the park that we just talked about over by, City Village, and the other one, Belmont Gardens, Heritage Park, right? I want to make sure that what we're doing is we're not just rushing to meet the RHNA requirements. We're doing this with a due diligence of we are creating a city that people see as a connective part of where they live, right? And so, yes, we have design standards, but that doesn't necessarily mean that they're all connected in a certain way. So I think it'd be great if we could somehow do that at one point.
Yeah, we can absolutely work on that. And some of the pieces that we are focusing on is making sure that there's consistent landscaping on both sides of the street. And so with City Village, we looked at the trees that were along Camino Ramon and we matched them on the other side of the street with Bartlett, which was approved in December, and looking to make sure that we're using the same plants and nomenclature throughout Bishop Ranch and being really thoughtful about the meandering sidewalks and how everything connects, but also not wanting everything to be kind of matchy-matchy where every single project looks the exact same. So we're trying to do that, and we can absolutely work on some exhibits that show how we're keeping things consistent, but also having some sparks of differentiation as you progress through Bishop Ranch along Camino Ramon and the key corridors.
Yeah, absolutely. I'm not looking for identical twins. I'm looking for cousins.
Yeah.
Right. So it should be at least the pathways and so forth. Maybe the buildings are a little different, but that would be very helpful to see. And I think that would be beneficial to those residents in this area who are, seeing all this construction, understand how this all connects. I think this is a great project. I think it's something that's, a great way to find affordable housing in this organization or in this city and making sure that we're looking at it. I do agree with Commissioner Wallace. The design itself to me looks more like an office building than it does a apartment complex, or even a hospital more than it does an apartment complex. So, maybe different tones or whatever it might be. Same with, questions always come up about parking. That's always going to be a big concern because we're going to have so many people just living on Camino Ramon. And there's only so many parking lots and parking spaces that people can go to, and you can't park on Camino Ramon. So I think that is a one point we're going to have to really have a discussion, because BR7 is now, you're taking that down. You're going to have the apartment buildings on the corner of Bollinger and Camino Ramon, right? So with all of these places asking for a, whether it be concession or whatever we want to call it, on decreased parking, the people are going to have to park somewhere, right? And so we have to kind of figure that out. And so at one point, I think that's going to be, in my mind, a concern, and it does come up in some of the conversations I've had with people, is where do all these people go? Like, where are they all going to park? Because right now, you go down to the city center and you can't even park in the city center half the time because it's already full. So that's just my biggest concern. So like I said, part of the master plan, I am totally on board with this. I think it's a great project. Would like to see a little bit different design to it, just because I would like to see something that's a little bit more engaging in how it connects to the larger community. And then also a pathway to, hey, let's actually take a walk and see what this looks like virtually I'm not saying you have to get us VR headsets, but that would be cool. But something to that nature. So, thank you.
Thank you
Okay.
for your feedback.
So go ahead.
Oh, I thought you were calling me up. I'm kind of up.
No,
at
I
you
just
today.
remember when we were doing City Village and at the end they had the sort of the flying drone movie of what it looked like. So
Yeah, I'll work with our team on some
Okay.
different iterations on how we can do view corridors and renderings and blend together the different developments so that you can see what's happening on both sides of Camino Ramon, and then also looking at Iron Horse Trail and
Yeah.
looking at some of those key community features that everyone's been focusing on as we've been going through the Planning Commission meetings.
thank you. So I have a few questions for you.
Okay,
Okay.
great.
And so I'm operating on the graphic that has the fire access because to me that was the easiest to discern. So question number one, has Eden Housing done other projects in which you had to split lots? And can you give us just a bit of your experience on that?
Yes, it's pretty common for us right now to do that. I'd say in the last 5 years, we've I think done 6 or 7 completed, and many more on the drawing board. One was across the street, or is across the street from the Warm Springs BART station, in which it's also in a very large master plan community. We're the inclusionary housing provider for the community itself. And we too were given this parcel of land and said, okay, Eden, go forth and prosper. And so what we ended up doing was we ended up doing a 2-building design as well, and taking a pedestrian walkway, if you will, probably 20 feet between the buildings, maybe even bigger. I'm not really good spatially, but big enough for a car, small enough for an RV, I think, or, you get where I'm going on that. But it was so that there could be this walkability connection to the future of the neighborhood being built, because we knew what the future plans were for expansion at that. So yes, we had to do the lot split as well. Those are typically done before you close on the financing or immediately after. And so you keep that big lot and you're just working on the maps and everything until you get into the financing stage of it. The other one that we're doing is a little bit mind numbing, and I'm really glad we're not doing it here. And that is airspace subdivisions within the same building. So we're doing library. It's a big building. There's a public library in one space, a public parking garage in another space, retail in one, daycare in another, and then 130 units of affordable housing. That is really, really complicated, but it's airspace subdivision, right? So we've done that before. In terms of what we're working on right now, we're working on very, very similar situation in Los Gatos, where we're adjacent to townhomes, but we're going to be the multifamily. But we're in that project, it's only big enough for one building, 60 units. And so very similar to this, though, where we're having to coordinate our design very carefully with the surrounding buildings to bring in elements, not that we look the same, but not that we don't want them to be pink and we're orange. That just hurts your eyes. But it's for that overall vision. So there's a lot of collaboration in this. So yeah, we do it quite a lot.
In the places where you have to build 2 different buildings and you end up doing it in lot splits, what's the time frame of completing one to completing the second? How long might one building sit there unneighbored?
They'll probably honestly go simultaneously. They can't, there's no reason it can't go simultaneously. One is a large family, one is a senior, so it's in different set-asides, which is purposely how, I'm really glad that this is what the community wanted, because that's the easier way to do it. If it were two large families or two seniors, you might have to phase those in. But you could still see some phasing. And in that particular situation, we're going to want to sit down with our general contractor and make sure we know which one to focus on. Do we focus on building back forward or forward back, and how that construction lines up, particularly with what's going to go on either side of the property? We just don't know. So it'll be something that we'll be working with, and something that's very common for us to work through.
But you don't envision a time at which one building gets built and then people move in and they're still waiting to build the second one?
It hasn't been our experience in these types of developments where the land has been donated and we're purposely going in with entitlements at the same
Okay.
time. It hasn't been our experience.
That's a good answer.
It is possible. I don't want to say it's
No.
not possible, but it hasn't been how we've approached this.
Okay, very good. So if you split the lots, and I think you sort of already answered it, but here was the question I wrote down. Which of the two buildings do you anticipate being built first? But it sounds like these are more or less simultaneous.
If one would go to the other, this is like non-technical Dixie talking to you, like, because I can pie in the sky think, but I'm betting the fire department's going to want to see that senior building go first with that fire EVA access. That's what I'm if I'm thinking technically. Architect, what do you think?
That sounds very reasonable.
And most likely the site will have to be included in whatever project goes first.
Okay.
Because that is all fire access. That will be the community room. That's where the turnaround for the fire truck is as well. So yes, most likely they would want to start from the back, and finish at the front.
Okay, thank you. Now, you talk about the access coming in from the office building north of that, but you said it would only be for emergency vehicles. How do you propose to limit anybody else using that entrance?
How do they do that?
So what we would do is put in either flexible bollards or removable bollards. So the fire could absolutely go through this space, but it would be an encumbrance so that everyone isn't using it.
Okay, very good. And don't go yet. Is there any possibility of generating a shared parking agreement with BR9? Because as I'm looking at this drawing, there's a nice row of parking places right next to Street A, which might facilitate families in the evening.
So I think we would need to look at that and talk with the Eden team and the Steinberg Hart team about the demand for parking for the affordable communities, and whether they expect that there's going to be that demand.
Okay, all right, thank you. And then the last one I wrote down, and I think Commissioner Alpert kind of touched on it, was are the sidewalks going to be wide enough for seniors, and about ADA accessibility within the buildings, particularly going up several levels?
Yes, we are also, as a firm, we're signatories of the universal design. It's called the Kelsey guidelines that go above and beyond, any ADA code compliance, but actually try to make universal design for all. So yes, ADA will be good. We have to comply with that by code, but we'll go above and beyond, based on, the Kelsey guidelines.
And do you, might not be your bailiwick, is this going to be a pet-friendly project?
Yes, all affordable housing in the state of California must allow pets.
Okay, thank you. Want our pet-friendly places.
Plus, I'm a dog person.
Okay, great. Well, it's very healthy to get out and walk your dog, so
Yes.
I'm a proponent. Okay, those are the questions that I have. So thank you. I also want to say before I move on, I really like this project, and I'm very pleased with it. I think it's extraordinary how you've managed to put very large open spaces in the middle so that light can come in. I'm also thrilled seeing the community gardens. And my fellow commissioners might remember that I try to sneak some of those in almost every project I see. But you guys are going to do it. So that's great. Really appreciate that. And I look forward to it. As this evolves, I'm somewhat familiar, having driven by the Eden Housing Project in Livermore. That project looks beautiful. And so I think that's, for me, that's really a nice endorsement.
Thank you. That is what you could expect from not only just after it's built, but ongoing with us involved in the community.
Okay, thank you. Okay, anything else, gentlemen? Staff? Okay, we look forward to the next iteration and hope that we've given you useful feedback for the project. So thank you
It
so
has
much.
been. Thank you. We look forward to comments at the Architectural Review Board as well. So thank you so very much.
Thank you. Thank you for coming tonight. Be careful in the rain. Yeah, I guess I have to speak again. Moving on. Okay, we are now at item next, which I believe is, okay, item 11.2, formation of the Planning Commission Ad Hoc Committee for Transportation Advisory Committee interviews. Chair Kuznick is supposed to say, do we have any volunteers?
Just need to,
Was that
just need to.
just two? Okay, Commissioner Alpert. I feel like, Gary and I are like the tag team on these, but I'm open. You want to rock, paper, scissors for it? No, just kidding. So, all right, it sounds like Commissioner Wallace is up for it. And then do we have any information on filling our opening staff?
Not as of yet. I believe the council next week will be discussing the interview process
Okay.
and the candidates.
I heard that there are 9 applicants.
I've heard that also.
Okay,
So-
I heard that on the city council recording. So
If you heard me speak at the council meeting, I'm hoping to have a 5th member before we have the commission vote on the upcoming general plan amendment also.
yes.
So
Um,
we are aware of that timing, so.
Okay. Do we have any other committee meeting, liaison meetings that people want to share?
I had a question, and that's to Ms. Chamberlain. And that is, you anticipate a vote on the general plan zoning text amendment. What is your target date for the final vote?
Well, we have, as you know, upcoming, so my little schedule, here we go. Next week and then February 25th are joint sessions with the council on the 6th and 7th. Then we would come back to the commission as a separate meeting for the 3rd hearing where the commission could take action. And that probably would be at the end of March.
End of March.
At this point in time, yeah.
Okay.
Just because of the noticing requirements that we have to go through. So, yeah, it
Okay.
could slide to April, but right now our target is kind of the end of March at this point in time.
All right. Thank you.
Any other committee information? I have sat through the Parks Commission meeting in which they were discussing Crow Canyon Gardens. I thought it was really interesting, partly because, just some of it related to development fees. And I thought it was an interesting comment that the parks get their park development money from the fees we charge developers. But the Assembly bill changed when those fees could be collected. And so that is modifying how they're looking at funding for the Crow Canyon Gardens update, which is slated to come in at about $8 million in a 5-phase project. So I thought that was really interesting because you're not collecting fees at the beginning of a project, you're collecting it when occupancy happens. So got to wait a little bit longer for that money. But if you're not familiar with it, I think the current plan is to save the redwood rounded ceiling that everybody remembers and make that into an open pavilion, knock down the walls, hopefully the rest stands. And there's one more small building that they're looking at preserving. And then it will be a matter of once they get into it, the state of the health of the building. And, who knows when you actually get behind those walls, what you may or may not find. So it's a long evolving project and it'll be interesting to see how it goes. So I thought that was interesting for me, both having been on the Parks Commission, but also the relationship to the Planning Commission and how we get fees and pay for projects in our city. All right, thank you. They did vote to approve it, so. Anything else for the good of order?
I attended the
Okay.
TAC on the 16th.
Yeah.
And the conversation really focused on a TDA, which is Transit Development Application Grant through the MTC and the Contra Costa County Public Works for $385,000 to create more accessible signals or pedestrian signals and access areas for 28 intersections throughout San Ramon. Which would be for hearing and visually impaired pedestrians. So it would have not only just sound of telling when to cross and so forth, but the arrows and so forth are more textile and so forth, so you can feel them and so forth. So if they're not able to get all $385,000 in the grant, most of the work would be done closer to the Doherty Valley High School area. That would be the priority, given there's there's been more conversations about that area than others. The second thing that they had a conversation about is the city of Danville sent out in their guides for parents this little image about different types of motorized scooters and bikes and so forth. And they thought that would be a good idea for San Ramon to do the same, given the fact that many parents don't know that, like motorized scooters, you actually have to have a driver's license to utilize, which I see kids all the time with scooters that probably aren't access. And there are people with mopeds that are also need to have a driver's license. So they thought it would be a good conversation to have. It really should fall on the retailers to have that conversation when parents are buying this, but they wanted to make more awareness. They also want to make sure that people are aware what could and couldn't be on the sidewalks. Like the e-bikes can because they're considered bicycles, but the scooters should not be on the pathways or walkways, which is also why you need a driver's license. So it's found it as an interesting conversation and look forward to seeing what they do with it.
Thank you very much. All right, anything else, staff? No?
Well, let's
Oh, yes.
back up.
Okay, I'm sorry.
Right now, you've mentioned that we have a joint meeting with our friends in the city council on the 11th and on the 25th, and then a final decision on the general plan amendment either late March or early April. Do you have any other projected dates of our meetings?
February 18th will be canceled, and I'm not sure what we have tentatively scheduled for early March yet.
Okay.
Things are in flux, as we'll say.
Okay, then I'm going to quickly